So the floor is yours, and the topic of the presentation is the populist authoritarian threat, and in Hungary and beyond.
No, it's actually Hungarian illiberalism, its impact worldwide. That's the title. So at first I would like to make a point that actually there is a Hungarian version of the book published in 2019, but basically that's the information from the Finnish one. But I would like to thank at first the invitation, but also the previous speaker, because I think that was an excellent example of why NGOs and free media is needed. Somehow to find out all these kind of details, for example, which usually the governments do not publish at all. I also have to mention a personal experience as well. So it's about 2 years ago, once I opened my email box and noticed that I had an email coming from the Hungarian embassy in Helsinki. And briefly mentioned, they just wanted me to ask pardon because I have distributed false information about the corona. I haven't done this, at least until now, but I have even a personal experience as well. Okay, Budapest has been my second home, let's say, that's my background since mid-1990s, and we still have a small flat in Buda, but I have to admit at the same time that, let's say, since maybe 2010 or something, I have noticed that I love my country more to some extent. Okay, I haven't lived, I have lived in Finland mostly. Okay. About the title, so when I received this title, I know that actually it's absolutely too broad topic. What kind of points I could mention about this? But at least even the first question: can we even agree the content of illiberalism? Does such an concept exist? Okay, people are using it a lot, but I personally prefer to use soft authoritarianism, because there is still a big difference if we compare, for example, Hungary to China or Russia. But still, let's say, democracy is very difficult in the end to define, and so that's why illiberalism is there and put in brackets. So, my comments are basically based on my forthcoming book. It's a working title at the moment. Hopefully, Central European University Press will publish it soon. The working title is Illiberal Mission Completed with a question mark. So may I have the next slide? Because
you can use that one.
Yeah. Now it's working. So basically, I would say that such a topic is too huge, and I have concentrate on three points about how Viktor Orban himself is defining the current system in Hungary in his speeches, and then there's another question: how we should relate these speeches to, let's say, to studies or rhetorics of indices and so on. And the third point will be these implications beyond Hungary. But okay, I would like to start my presentation with a quotation from Prime Minister Orban, who about 5 years ago posted that 27 years ago here in Central Europe, we believed that Europe is our future. Today we know that we are the future of Europe. Okay, that's correct in a sense that definitely Hungary has become much bigger in a sense that indeed international media knows it's Viktor Orban is in Finnish news at least once a week, and nowadays particularly because of the NATO issue. So why is like that? Okay, to some extent I would mention it's Orban's person, but usually in a broader sense it's exciting, because Hungary has been an exciting and conflicting space for political ideas, not only during the last 10 years, but let's say last 30, even 50, or even 100 years. So there have been so many Räntsälvartage. If I check that from the Finnish point of view, we have had always this quite smooth democracy all the time. But let's say if you think about Hungary and more or less the whole East Central Europe, there have been so many systemic changes. That is one of the reasons why Hungary and many other countries are so interesting. But there is one thing which we have discussed many things until now, but there is one thing which we haven't mentioned yet: learning. As we know that democracies and democrats are learning from each other, it's also that autocrats are learning from each other. And that's why I'm very interested what does Viktor Orbán learn from, let's say, Russia or from Central Asia and so on. So who is learning from who and so on. But also what is very interesting and very surprising, at least for me, that it's indeed, as was mentioned, it's the US conservative Republicans are learning at the moment politics from Hungary. That was something very extraordinary. We aimed to present a paper 1.5 years ago in which we compared Hungary and US. We got very critical actually because it seemed that you can't compare oranges and apples. But if you check some newspapers this year, for example, Washington Post published a 3-part analysis that the urbanization of America, and these articles claim, for example, the Hungarian Prime Minister has won and the Finnish party has won the cultural war and so on, things like that. So to me the great question is how serious Hungarian example could be taken in the United States. Because basically, if you think about the history, there's a huge difference between these two. Okay, I think this picture reveals it all. Of course, pictures and photos, they could be interpreted differently, and it's the subjective element in it. But for me, it's enough to say that I think it's one of the best shots during the last few months, probably published in Nepsava. And to me, the question is all the time: can you trust to this man? Of course, my answer is definitely no. And in our case, we have indeed this NATO case at the moment. For example, there have been promises already last summer that Hungary will ratify Finnish and Swedish membership several times during this autumn, and as it used to be now, it might be the first session in February. Okay, I would call him somehow a bully, so the guy who is teasing others at the schoolyard. Okay, but I just... Okay, then the question, if we can't trust the politicians and their words, it's also the same with Putin, or let's say with Trump or many other cases as well. So the great problem is how to evaluate speeches. I think that still we have to take them even literally or even seriously because they have those positions. And okay, we have compared recently Orbán's pilot Dušnad and other speeches and published a few international articles even from that, and there are a few points which I would like to make on the basis of these speeches. And it's interesting from my point of view that not even Viktor Orbán does not know what would be the proper name for the system what is taking place in this country at the moment. Okay, also the dictator and dictatorship has been mentioned, but also democracy and liberalism, illiberalism and so on. And he discussed this topic a few years ago in pilot Dušnad, and the final result was somehow that there is no proper name for the NER Nemzeti Együttműködési Rendszernek. So that's the Hungarian version of it. So the second point is that there is not even a proper definition for the concept. Okay, concepts are concepts because they have many meanings. If you think about a democracy, for example, there are hundreds of definitions for democracy. But on the basis of those speeches, we notice that there are at least 7 different meanings which Orbán used the word illiberalism. For example, like history, ideology, and so on. At least 7 different meanings. And the next one would be that very typical for his rhetorics to find out what is actually Fidesz. I think it's very interesting to study. Is it anymore a party in a Western sense? I would say no. It's rather somehow representing the state party ideas before '89 and so on. Okay, but there are still free elections in Hungary. Not fair, but free elections. Okay. And first of all, he's using a lot of negative images. It's a bit somehow surprising that I would somehow classify Fidesz as a conservative party, basically ideologically. But there were only 3 of them references to conservative, and one of them referred even to Trump and so on. But what was the case? What was scapegoat all the time? Liberals. Liberals, liberals, liberals. As I have written there, over 100 references to liberalism in those speeches. Very typical strategies to use to blame the others, then you do not need to define yourself. And another one also, it seems to be, we had also some views that is Orban represent a losing side, or is his moment somehow over? To me it seems to be that the heyday was somehow the Euro elections in last time, when he tried to somehow to smash the Christian Democrat Party and to use this idea of a Christian Europe. But well, suddenly, the Christian Europe as a formula, it vanished a year later. Nowadays, he's speaking about Christian liberties. So this is a kind of how he's speaking. But if there is, okay, and another one. Well, I'm also wondering all the time that is there already a personality cult in this country? It depends from who you ask, and this is an image 2 or 3 days ago from Magyar Nemzet. So to me, this is quite evident that it's definitely represented the Prime Minister uncritical in a very positive light. But okay, then the question is that. Indeed, can we trust politicians? How can we find out the reality? And it's about more or less an epistemology and what can you trust? And that's why we have compared different indexes. So I have in my paper there are at least 2 or 3 pages about different indexes. And it's enough just to mention here that if we compare rule of law index, Hungary is the weakest in the European Union. And usually, well, the Human Development Index, Hungary is there, the 44th, which is its best part. Okay, Hungary is quite nice place to live. I have personally experienced it. But if you think about, let's say, freedom of the press or corruption and the other indexes, Hungary is quite weak in the European context. So basically, all speeches, they have to be contextualized, and that's what we have done, compared in several articles, Orban's words and these international indexes. And finally, because indeed my question has been for years, can I trust Orban's words? And then we made, it's unfortunately only in Finnish, a comparison. We compared all together 8 indexes. And we just compared then to the average. Hungary is the 56, what is somehow, it's a coincidence, but as you know, this is a very symbolic number in Hungary. So in the end, 56 position, if there are about 200 countries in the world, it's quite fine actually. It's quite good being in the best third part of it. But if we think about the European Union, for example, it's much worse. And that's also, okay, a detail. As you may know, that we Finns, we are the happiest country in the world according to these indexes. Well, it's very difficult for us to accept that. But the main point is somehow that if you compare and use these indexes, okay, they could be partial as well. But they reveal something in the long run. That's the main point. If you, for example, check the democracy index, how is Hungary going? It's going downwards all the time. And it's also another point that, to which group you should compare yourself. I usually tell as an example that for us Finns it was it's very important to join the European Union in '95 because they were the Swedes and Austrian and not Hungarians or Estonians and so on and so on. Your reference group also matters. And more and more it looks like that the Hungarian reference group is not anymore the Visegrad countries, but it's more and more the Balkans. So Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. Okay, what kind of implications are there then? Well, I checked that there could be two kind of. On one hand, these implications, okay, like lobbying, what was mentioned in the previous speech, but I would say somehow in region and spatial level, regionally, let's say, for example, Slovenia has been discussed, and Janša's governance, it looked like he identified himself to Orban and so on. On the European Union level, first of all, I would like to raise there the point of view that the foreign policy of the European Union is based on consensus. And to be honest, I have been quite I've been quite angry several times because Hungary has blocked so many ideas in the European Union's foreign policy. Global points we discussed already, but the next one would be these indexes and also I have only mentioned the Slovenia and Serbia, but there could be other countries as well. For example, Romania. It was some more or less a discussion a few years ago if the social democratic government of Romania was more or less following the Hungarian path. At the moment, Italy and Poland in particular, they are good examples. For example, during the last election campaign, the Hungarian family policies were discussed in Italy as well. But indeed, as I said, the US Republicans, they are the most interesting case and the most surprising case at the same time. But then I have an idea that, as I mentioned, that it's all the time that learning matters. But is it only that Orban is learning new tricks from authoritarian leaders? Or could Orban teach also soft authoritarianism to this country? So here, I mean, okay, I'm not sure how serious I'm taking it by myself, but at least we could open this kind of discussion that who is learning from whom. For example, if you think about the Eastern opening and the Turkic states, for us Finn, it has been quite a surprise that we are not anymore relatives. Hungarians would like to represent all the Turkish nations that they had this time. So it has been a quite big issue in Finland. Okay. And then I'm running out of my time, so this could be my conclusions that is it so that Hungary is an extraordinary, as some people say, and Orban as well, you can't compare Hungary to other countries. But if we accept this kind of view, it is more or less the same than our President Kekkonen used to say that foreigners should not compare Finnish neutrality to others. So is it possible to compare or not? This is a very crucial question. I would say that my points represent the case that, of course, Orbanism could be compared. And in many cases, I'm more and more comparing Hungary to Russia, for example, the electoral system and a few other points as well. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that Hungary definitely, and I would like that it remains so, is a part of the European Union. That's why it's very difficult to compare which countries you compare. But more or less, what is the result if we somehow accept this kind of politicking with Viktor Orban is doing it somehow, we have called it politics in the grey zone. So it's somehow very nice that you mentioned Saab power. I was enjoying that concept. It could be used somehow. It's somehow like this grey zone. There are no rules, only power, and maintaining power matters. And as I said, who is teaching who? That's somehow could be discussed. And of course, there are something which could be exported to less democratic countries, and there are these two points, last points that there are still very many countries which do not even have free elections. Until now, the Hungarian parliamentary, they have been free. But it's a kind of trick because they have to also fair elections. Nowadays the point is there has to be free and fair elections. And mostly I think the most difficult topic in Hungary at the moment is that the elections haven't been fair. For example, if you think about media and all this campaigning and all these tricks. And finally, this national consultation. I'm quite sure that probably a majority of you do not take this national consultation seriously. Neither do I. But if you think about how to somehow to manipulate public opinion, this is a very clever trick. And if you think about, they have been, is it there already, the 11th, but at least there have been at least 10, which means that since 2010 there has been approximately one consultant per year. Very extraordinary, and as far as I've heard, only in Singapore there is a similar consultation. Thank you very much.